All right. Hello and welcome to Navigating Utah's River Access, a three-part webinar focused on stream access in Utah. Um, Today is our third and final webinar in this series, and it is titled Working Solutions Under the Current Framework. I am Chase Lamborn, the Assistant Director of the Institute of Outdoor Recreation and Tourism at Utah State University, and I will be facilitating today's webinar. And just to provide some background on the Institute, we are formally recognized by the Utah State Legislature and provide research and technical support in helping communities, governmental, and non-governmental agencies plan and manage outdoor recreation and tourism in Utah and beyond. And we are very excited to be hosting this webinar series, and we hope the information and perspectives shared will be valuable in helping people understand the rights and responsibilities we all have regarding stream access in Utah. Before we also get going, I just wanted to thank the Office of Property Rights Ombudsman and Land Use and Eminent Domain Advisory Board for funding this webinar, along with some educational videos and a workbook that we will be releasing in June. And I also want to provide this brief disclaimer that the purpose of this webinar is to provide practical and educational information about stream access in Utah for both private landowners and the recreating public. And efforts have been made to ensure this information is consistent with Utah's current stream access framework. However, it is not legal advice, and please consult applicable laws, agencies, landowners, or legal counsel when specific questions or disputes arise. So, as I just mentioned, this webinar consists of three parts. The first webinar was a couple weeks ago, and it was titled The Past, Present, and Future of Stream Access in Utah. And there we discussed the history of stream access law, the current law governing stream access, and how things may change moving forward. The second webinar, which was last week, was titled Utah Stream Access, Rights, Responsibilities, and Enforcement. And in that webinar, we provided practical information for landowners and the recreating public. We also invited law enforcement to provide some context to the things that they respond to most frequently, along with some tips to help everybody reduce these types of incidents. And Liz can put the link to those two webinars in the chat if you're interested in checking those out. They're on our YouTube page. And today is our third and final webinar, which is titled Working Solutions in the Current Framework. And the goal of this webinar is to showcase ways that private landowners and the public are working together to provide opportunities that are mutually beneficial for both parties. And so today we are joined by three special guests who have extensive experience with stream access in Utah and will be providing unique and informative perspectives. Our first presenter is Mr. Aaron Sisson, who is the current program director for the Dedicated Hunter Program and the Walk-in Access Program for the Division of Wildlife Resources. Mr. Andrew Becker has worked as a writer, journalist, and editor for nearly 30 years, and his work has appeared in leading angling publications along with other major news outlets. He's also written extensively about stream access in Utah and the Walk-in Access Program and stream access more broadly. And then Mr. Terry Camp has built his career on Capitol Hill, serving in the offices of Senator Orrin Hatch and on the House Committee on Natural Resources. He now serves as the Vice President for Public Policy for the Utah Farm Bureau Federation, where he advocates for farmers and ranchers throughout the state. Now, over the course of this webinar, it has been a great pleasure speaking to these gentlemen, and I'm very excited for what they have to share with us today. And up to this point in the series, the primary purpose has been to explain the legal framework around stream access. Today's presentation, we will also focus on the realities of working within that stream access framework. However, I also encourage, and I hope we have a constructive discussion about how the system could be improved moving forward in ways that benefit both private landowners and the recreating public. And so with that, We will begin, and we will first hear from Aaron Sisson, who will be providing an overview of Utah's walk-in access program. Then we will be hearing from Andrew Becker, who will be sharing experiences and insights from visiting every walk-in access property in the state of Utah. And finally, we will hear from Terry Camp, who will be sharing some perspectives and concerns from private landowners, along with some win-win scenarios and potential models to utilize moving forward. So after these presentations, there will be a short question and answer session. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will get to them at the end. So now, without further ado, I will turn the time over to Aaron Sisson. Aaron, the time is yours.
Oh, you're on mute, Aaron.
Thank you for that. That might be the second time I did that. Excited to be here and excited to share with you guys some of the information here regarding the walk-in access program. Quick overview while I get this pulled up. I'll be going over a little bit of the history of the walk-in access program, kind of its origins, where the program has been in the past, where we currently are, and some of the rules and stipulations associated with the walk-in access program. So one question that we frequently get is what is a walk-in access program? It's a program where the state of Utah will compensate private landowners for allowing the public to access their property for hunting, fishing, and trapping activities. In a lot of eastern states, their walk-in access programs are really big and are quite extensive in a lot of areas. The purpose of the program is really simple. It's to provide more places for the public, hunters and anglers to go easily, to strengthen relationships between the Division of Wildlife and private landowners. Sometimes those relationships can be stressed. And then to help improve relationships between public users, mainly hunters, anglers, and trappers, with those same private landowners. The program started in 2000. Its inception was in 2004, but the pilot started in 2005, primarily in the northern region. And we were able to create an admin rule to manage the walk-in access program. And then in 2007, it was expanded statewide to allow landowners across the state to enroll in the program. One other question that we get often is who can use our walk-in access properties. Only people who have obtained a walk-in access authorization can access walk-in access properties. And they must be participating in allowable activities. So not all activities are allowed on walk-in access properties. It's not just a general recreation agreement that we have with landowners. It does not allow for hiking, biking, camping, mushroom hunting, horseback riding, any of those other extra activities. It is only for hunting, fishing, and trapping. And so there is a misconception sometimes where landowners think, well, everybody's going to be out there. There's going to be tubers and there's going to be people having picnics and camping and things like that. And that through the walk-in access program, those activities are not allowed through the agreements that we set up with our landowners here in the state of Utah. It's actually quite focused in its scope of who's allowed to go out and access those properties and use them. Like I said before, allowable activities, it's up as it could include as much as big game, upland game, turkey, waterfowl, cougar, bear, trapping, and fishing. Now, that being said, landowners can allow or not allow any one or all of those activities. It is entirely up to the landowner. The landowner has full discretion on which of these activities they do or don't want on their property. Landowners also have the ability to limit the season of access. So, for example, if you have a pasture that you graze cattle in the spring and you don't want to allow hunting, fishing, and trapping during the spring, say May or June, or in the summer or any other time of the year, you can actually stipulate those, landowners can stipulate those restrictions in their lease agreement. And we would publish that on our website, that access would not be allowed during that given window that the landowner doesn't wish the public to be accessing their property. Really, the goal is for the program to be an asset to the landowner and not a liability or a problem. So going back to my previous slide a little bit, alongside these allowable activities, we also have some other, I'll get into that a little bit later when I talk about compensation and things like that. Currently, we have 49,500 acres, just over, for hunting and trapping, or just under 40 miles of river access, and 221 acres of flat water access in the state of Utah. Under our current contracts, we're enrolling some new properties currently, and that number should jump this year to about 67,000 acres, if not a little bit more of acres of hunting and trapping. And I believe our stream access and flat water will remain pretty close. They might go up slightly. We have a couple of extra acres that we're enrolling. So now we get into the landowner stuff. Really, from a landowner perspective, the things that really matter when it comes to the walk-in access program. In order to qualify, your property has to have suitable habitat. So if you don't have a stream or a river on your property, we can't enroll it in fishing. Or if you don't have fish habitat, rather, because you could have flat water. And so one thing that we look at is we look for suitable habitat. And if your property has a suitable habitat for that activity, then we can enroll in the program. There's no minimum acreage. Anything from 5 acres and up, we are willing to enroll, and even less. Flat water and river access is calculated a little bit different. It's not by acre. It's based on the miles or fractions of a mile of river access that is granted. And all those calculations here in just a second. We do evaluate every property. We look at the habitat quality, the species availability, the size of the property, how close your property is to other walk-in access properties, the allowable activities that the landowner allows in their property, and then the distance to population centers. Each region, this is a little bit different. In the southeastern corner of the state, a population center might have a little bit different appearance to a population center, we'll say here in central Utah. And so we let each region kind of look at that and apply those criteria. After we look at this criteria, we give each property a score, and that helps us rank our properties. In the event that we had more properties than we had available funds for access, this would allow us to grade a property and decide, well, do we enroll or not enroll each property based on that evaluation? We haven't currently run into that. Currently, we have more funds available than we have properties enrolled in the program. So we're always looking to enroll new acres. The compensation for fishing with the stream access is, for a 1-year contract, is $1,000 for a quarter to a half mile. And then if you're going to do a 5-year contract, you'd get $1,200 per quarter to half mile. And then on top of that, you'd get $250 for each additional quarter mile of access. And then again, if you're doing a 5-year contract, that's more valuable. for recreating, you'd get a $300 for every additional quarter-mile section of the river. And then we go into compensation for hunting. This is our old format. It was very convoluted. It was very complicated, and it was difficult to manage. We were able to simplify that to a base payment of $400 plus $1.10 an acre. We updated that this year to a base rate of $600 with a base payment of $600 with a $1.35 per acre enrolled in the program. We currently have grant proposals in for 2 other funding sources, which would hopefully lend us another $100,000 of funding to be able to enroll more properties in the walk-in access program. We've been doing some comparisons to the surrounding states so that we know if we're somewhere within the realm of competitive with other states to see if they're giving more or less for walk-in access. In Colorado, their base rate is anywhere from $1 to $2.50, with big game payments getting anywhere from $10 to $20 an acre. So we're currently significantly below that. In Nevada, it's a base payment of $4.40 with $1.10 per acre, so it reflects our previous payment. And Idaho and Arizona payments range anywhere from $1 an acre to $15 an acre. So we're in the realm of other surrounding states, but we are on the low end of what states are offering for walk-in access. And so that is my presentation. That's some of the information. If we have time for questions, I'd be happy to answer questions now, or we can take questions later.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have a few questions for you, but I'll ask those at the end. And then Andrew, if you want to get your screen up. And so next we'll be hearing from Andrew Becker, who will be sharing some insights that he has gained from visiting every fishable walk-in access property in Utah. So whenever you're ready, Aaron, the time is yours. Sorry, I meant Andrew. The time is yours.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for this opportunity. This is a bit of
Andrew, do you want to turn on your video?
Sure. 1 second. Hold on. Okay. Sorry about that. Hi there, everybody. Okay. Yeah, so my name is Andrew Becker. I'm a journalist in Salt Lake City. And this is a bit of a tour romp that I did for a story that ran in a fly fishing quarterly called The Drake, where I'm a senior writer. I visited every single walk-in access that has moving water. That's about 40 properties, as well as a few of the flat waters. I fished about 2/3 of those. Some of them, when I was there, it was high water, weren't terribly fishable. Put about 3,500 miles on my truck doing this. I spoke with dozens of people, from property owners and state and elected officials, conservationists, some of their business people as well as officials in Wyoming and Idaho. And that story ran in the summer 2025 edition. Before I get going, I just a few other thank yous to the property owners and the ranchers who provide access, like this gentleman, Darren Johnson, who's down on Mud Creek near Schofield, to the officials who have worked really hard to gain access for the public, for advocates who continue to push for even greater access, and for those who are tuning in today who want to learn more and play their part, as well as to the team at USU for making this happen. Thank you all. Walk-in access in Utah has abundant potential. There's some really great fishing throughout the state. It's a great opportunity to visit different parts of the state besides the destination or heavily used areas along the Wasatch back. there's some places where the access is incredible. It is really roadside. There's other places where you get a lot of opportunity for solitude and some pretty fun and remote adventure. That said, it's still a bit of a jumble when it comes to navigating stream access. It's not always as clear as this property owner has made it for where to go and how to access some of these properties. And that's even the case of how do you get to some of these properties. I visited from everywhere from southeastern, southwestern parts of the state, all the way up to, this is right near the Idaho border. It's North Eden Creek. It was really hard to find a way to get here. I had to call around and ask a bunch of different people who might have some suggestions. And by the time I finally got there, what I found wasn't a lot. This was fortunately, it had been heavily grazed. Otherwise, being able to get a fishing lure or a fly into that water would have been pretty challenging, unless that's your thing. And because of some of that remoteness, some of these areas don't get a ton of visitation. This is out in the Rush Valley, kind of in the West Desert, and it had seen maybe a dozen people over a year or so sign into the walk-in access register form. And some of that's for good reason. It's remote. Some of the fishing is pretty challenging. Granted, obviously there's snow on the ground. This was in January of 2024, and it was a hard place to fish. Elsewhere, there's challenges in being able to navigate. On the left is that North Eden Creek and where and how I was greeted when I got up there finally. Other places, understanding these are working properties, working ranches, but a lot of beehives. I wasn't in the mood to get stung that day. So there are challenges here. In some places, the access is very clear. For anyone who's fished on any of the walk-in access properties on the Wasatch, back on the Weber, it's pretty hard to miss. Here you can see the directions are pretty easy, pretty straightforward. And with that, there is pressure. The access is incredible, and it's a really fun fishery, but you're not going to be alone. But that said, there are so many great opportunities, again, back on Mud Creek, to catch some really great fish and a variety of species. So the Weber, as I mentioned, is really one of the gems of the walk-in access in the state. It has some of the best and easiest access. It does get a lot of pressure, and there are some big questions about its future. Both, I would say, from talking to old timers about the fishery itself, but also about how long some of those properties will continue to make access possible. Really, walk-in access, as Aaron mentioned, it begins before the Public Waters Access Act, which an earlier webinar had addressed that law and its implications. Really, walk-in access was presented as a solution about 16 years ago, shortly after PWAA passed. There were a task force, the Utah Waterways Task Force was set up to examine walk-in access. Money was set aside by the Utah legislature. There were hearings about this. At that time, the DWR director testified that officials believed they could bring on about 500 additional miles into walk-in access, which really, based on what PWAA had done in terms of access and reducing the amount of accessible mileage on streams, was a huge boon. And with it, the legislature appropriated more money. There was even federal money, about $2.2 million that had been earmarked for walk-in access and really to target southern Utah. Northern Utah has much more private land than southern Utah, so that's where many more of the properties in general, or where there's been kind of greater adoption. But there's been challenges in opening up more access in southern Utah, some of that because the belief is there's already a lot of public land there. So where are we today? in walk-in access. Like I said before, there are some great fishing opportunities, a variety of species, healthy fish, some real adventure, fantastic scenery, and little pressure. Um, Other sites, they're worth a visit or two. Again, great opportunity to see different parts of the state. A handful, as I also showed, um, it's there's some challenging fishing. If that's your thing, I give it a twirl. But it's these are some places remote, hard to get to, and the opportunities are, as I said, challenging. The program itself really peaked in 2017. I had gotten data from the state looking at the 20 or so years worth of data in terms of the miles that were enrolled. It peaked in 2017, about 59 stream miles. And there's been a general trend of decline since then. There's been some fluctuations, as there always is with the program. But where we are 39, when I started my tour, there were about 34 miles enrolled. It had jumped over 40 a little bit, and where Aaron had mentioned there's 39 today. He had also mentioned, at least in terms of maybe potentially up until recently, that budget, at least on the fishing side, has remained relatively flat, and even so, the state hasn't been able to spend all of its money. It's been a challenge to get more of these properties enrolled, and as such, that number has really hovered into the 30s or 40s in terms of the stream mileage. With, again, like the Weber, it gets hammered pretty hard in the summertime, and so there really is a need for probably some fresh ideas, but also to really try to work on enrolling some more properties. Some of them, again, this is a spot. I didn't fish it. It was about 95 degrees or so when I was here in the Malad last in a couple Augusts ago, and it's not necessarily the ideal or idyllic in terms of fishery, but there is still a purpose, I think, for all of these, and part of it is we don't want to lose more miles. We really want to try to keep in what we have. That's critical. I think also it is a function, as Aaron mentioned, of the proximity to population centers and where there are waters and opportunities to fish. And so there's some that are just going to be better than others. Ironically, as I mentioned, there have been challenges in getting some of the southern Utah properties enrolled, but in total, they have more mileage in the southern region than elsewhere, and that is really due to some pretty significant access mileage on the Sevier River as well as Panguitch Creek. Panguitch, which is a beautiful little fishery. Panguitch Lake is just a few miles down the road from here, depending on the direction you're heading. It's a blue ribbon fishery. Seeing the fish rise at night is kind of incredible to see how it's dimpled like a golf ball with all the rises. But a beautiful pasture, easy casting, was really a gorgeous spot. I have to say, one of the areas where there could be investment is how in the world do you find some of these properties? Other states, Wyoming specifically, also offer some GPS coordinates on how do you get to these properties. In some of the mapping that DWR offers, there is some pretty explicit great directions. Others, it's on your own. Good luck. And that poses its own kind of challenge. For here, I sort of through dumb luck found GPS coordinates on an old DWR website, and was able to use those to really drill down and actually get to a lot of these properties that otherwise would have been really difficult for me to find. Besides that, there's some big questions about the road ahead. Again, this is kind of the view out to North Eden Creek. It was out there. It was remote. There was a lot of adventure. It was an interesting place to get to. But there are these questions about how sustainable, how viable walk-in access is moving forward because of some of the concerns that are multifaceted around turnover on ranches and those ranches or properties not being handed to the next generation and being parceled off and sold off. We've certainly seen that in different stretches, not only on the Weber but elsewhere. And so it really comes down to relationships between anglers and property owners, between the state and property owners, as a way of as some of the property owners that I spoke with really talked about a Utah heritage, that it had always been their family's practice to allow the public on. They liked knowing who was on, but they felt it was part of their stewardship was to allow public onto their property, especially when it comes to water. In the second or third driest state, we really have a limited resource here compared to some of our neighbors. There's also plenty of potential. There are some phenomenal properties out in the Uintas, and when it comes back to those 500 miles, there's a big question about where are they, and is there a way of revisiting any of that? This is just a quick look at the some of the presentations that the DWR made during the 2010 Waterways Task Force hearings, just giving a sense of some of these properties and where some of the other mileage might be that could be opened up. As part of my story, I was trying to figure out where exactly those miles were. I think there's an opportunity to dig back in and take a look at where they are. I tried talking to or getting that information from as many different people as I could, and no one had an immediate answer. But eventually did find that in a grandma request, there was a spreadsheet that really kind of drilled down and looked at where some of those miles are. And it totaled at about 482, 481 miles. So they're out there. There's an opportunity to tap back into that. That would be hugely helpful, I think, for angling in the state. Other states, Wyoming, for instance, has 2 to 3 times the number of stream miles that we do. Some of that is, again, the volume and the amount of water that they have in their state. They are very concerned about pressure from outfitters, and they don't really advertise what they pay to landowners because they don't want to get outbid because of that competition. In 2024, they paid $1.3 million for hunting and fishing access leases. In Idaho, there is a similar annual evaluation evaluation of properties. That is really a way to determine the best and most the highest value properties in terms of quality, or highest quality, I should say. That is also reviewed by a panel of experts that then make recommendations to the state on where they should invest their money. And it allows for further incentivization of property owners, but to not have the state get into a bidding war. They look at as a win-win for the state and anglers, as well as those property owners. And in 2025, they spent around $600,000. So again, there's a bit more of an investment happening there as well. That said, from an angling perspective, we continue to have our own responsibilities and what we need to do to help ensure access, both what we have today and future access. And we really need to follow those responsibilities. And that extends into educating ourselves to sign in, to sign up for the program as is required, and where there are kiosks to sign in to do our part and let it be known that we were there. That helps the state understand kind of what's happening in terms of usage with this program. We got to read up. We have to be educated and understand what it means to be in walk-in access. There is some kind of an alphabet soup as well of wildlife management, areas that allow access and other easements. But to understand when you're on walk-in access, what that means, and we should always be showing that respect, but particularly with property owners who have opened up their property for angling and hunting. And we got to clean up, whether it's our mess or somebody else's. We have to do our bit to not only put fish in the net, but also put some garbage in in whatever receptacle we have with us. And that's what I have to say. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew. That was really, really informative. Great information, and what a cool adventure that was. And we have some great questions for you as well at the end that we'll get to. So next, we'll be hearing from Terry Camp, who will share some perspectives and concerns from private landowners, along with some win-win scenarios that have seemed to work well between landowners and the public. So with that, Terry, I'll turn the time over to you. And then Andrew, don't forget to put your mute on. Thanks.
Okay, you can see all that. Okay, can you see my screen? Okay, Chase.
Yeah, that looks great.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to present today. My name is Terry Camp, and I serve as Vice President of Public Policy for the Utah Farm Bureau Federation. I'm also a very proud Utah State Aggie. Today, I wanted to talk about streambed access from the perspective of our farmers, ranchers, and private landowners in Utah. I think this issue often gets framed as a recreation debate, but for agricultural producers, it reaches a lot deeper than that. It touches private property rights, agriculture, water infrastructure, liability, fairness, and just day-to-day realities of managing working lands. I will say it is a unique challenge to go last in a three-part webinar series. One of my former bosses used to always use the Morris K. Udall quip that everything that needs to be said has been said, but not everyone has said it. But I put a lot of thought into this presentation, and I hope I can add some value. So my goal today is not to suggest that recreation and agriculture are incompatible. Many farmers and ranchers hunt, fish, float, and enjoy Utah's rivers and streams themselves. The real question is how we protect private property rights, respect working lands, and find practical ways for recreation and stewardship to coexist. And that matters because Utah has a unique mix of public land, private land, ag land, and heavily used recreation corridors. So a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work well in a state like ours. The better path is cooperation, education, clear rules, voluntary partnerships that recognize and value private landowners. So let's go forward. I just wanted to briefly share a little bit about the Utah Farm Bureau Federation in case some of you aren't familiar. We get a lot of questions about what the difference between the Federation and Utah Farm Bureau Insurance is. So the Utah Farm Bureau Federation is our state's largest voluntary organization of farmers and ranchers, and our mission is to inspire all Utah families to connect, succeed, and grow through the miracle of agriculture. And we have 37,000 member families throughout the state that are committed to protecting our farms and ranchers and ensuring a safe, fresh, and locally grown food supply. We have members in all 29 counties and that belong to 28 county farm bureaus, and that together makes the Utah Farm Bureau Federation. I also wanted to just briefly mention our policy development process. And I think this is just important so you understand how our members come to the policies that we advocate for. So our policies come from members at a county level. They're debated, refined, and adopted through a grassroots member-led process. So that means when Utah Farm Bureau speaks on issues like private property, access, trespass, liability, voluntary conservation programs, those positions are coming directly from the experiences of our farmers and ranchers on the ground. So we start our policy process every spring with what we call SISMs, or spring issue surfacing meetings. The county farm bureaus discuss and debate issues they're seeing throughout the summer, and then they bring those issues to county farm bureau annual business meetings in the fall, and then pass resolutions. And every year we pass a new policy book at our annual convention. And that policy book is what guides Farm Bureau's advocacy efforts. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about why this conversation matters. So healthy rivers and streams depend on healthy partnerships and relationships. Utah's rivers and streams support ag, recreation, wildlife, and urban and rural economies. Streambed access affects far more than whether someone can fish, float, or recreate in a stream. It affects the people who own, manage, pay taxes on, and depend on land around rivers and streams. It's a private property issue because many of Utah's rivers and streams cross privately owned farms, ranches, and rural properties. It's an ag issue because farms and ranches are not just scenery along waterways. They're often used for grazing, irrigation, livestock watering, fencing, crop production, and equipment access. It's a water issue because farmers and ranchers rely on water rights, diversions, ditches, headgates, and stream channels to operate. It's a liability issue because landowners may be left dealing with injuries, accidents, conflicts, trash, fire risk, and damaged infrastructure on land that they may or may not have invited people onto. And it's a fairness issue because private landowners pay taxes, maintain fences, manage weeds, protect stream banks, repair damage, and carry the costs of ownership. So from Farm Bureau's perspective, it's unfair to treat private agricultural land as public recreation corridors without recognizing the costs and burdens that are placed on the landowner. So long-term access really depends on trust, and trust depends on respect, communication, and responsibility. As has been mentioned, Utah is a public land state. More than 64% of Utah is federally owned. Another 10% is state owned, and around 4.5% is tribally owned or managed. This makes Utah and some of our neighboring Western states a lot different than other states. For comparison, only 1.9% of the state of Texas is federally owned, 0.8% of New York, 1.1% of Nebraska, 1.5% of Maine, and 0.3% of Connecticut. So that just gives you an idea of how different some of these states are from us. And as we're an abundant public land state, a lot of public lands often run through or near private working lands. Roads, trailheads, river corridors, parking areas, gates, irrigation crossings, and stream banks often sit next to farms and ranches. And as Andrew mentioned earlier, because Utahns and visitors are surrounded by public land, I think some users may assume nearby land is also open. But private land is still private land, even when it's adjacent to public land or located along a river. And so in these mixed ownership landscapes, enforcement is a lot harder. Recreation users may not know where they are at all times. There can be bad cell phone service. Landowners may struggle to respond when trespass occurs. Law enforcement might be far away or lack resources to address every situation quickly. And so we're always worried in Farm Bureau that the cost of recreation isn't unfairly falling on adjacent landowners. If society values access to recreation, then society should also value the people whose lands make that access possible. So I wanted to just read a couple slides about Farm Bureau's views on private property rights. So our policy states that property rights are among the human rights essential to the preservation of individual freedom. We support the sanctity and protection of private property rights without government interference, and we support private property owners' right to close their land to public access. That doesn't mean Farm Bureau is opposed to recreation. It means recreational access should be built on respect for the people who own, maintain, and are legally responsible for the land. The next slide, Utah Farm Bureau policy also emphasizes that streambed access must respect private property rights. Private property owners should retain the right to control access to their property. Public agencies, we also believe they should follow the same rules as the general public, and recreational access on private property should be clearly defined, workable, and respectful of landowner rights. I will say the state of Utah has done a fantastic job with our recreational use statute found in Title 57, Chapter 14, which provides important liability protections for landowners when people use land for recreational purposes. It does a great job in this area. It doesn't eliminate all landowner concerns, but it goes a long way to making sure that landowners are protected from liability, whether people pay to recreate or not. And even when a landowner may not be legally responsible, they still can face disputes, phone calls, cleanup costs, insurance worries, damaged infrastructure, and ultimately conflicts. So we support accountability for damage and trespass. We believe private property should generally be considered closed unless permission is granted. When damage occurs, landowners should have meaningful remedies to pursue. All right, next I wanted to talk about challenges landowners face. I've talked a little bit about this already, but most landowners are protecting their livelihood. They're not trying to pick a fight with recreators. Many producers are protecting livestock, crops, irrigation systems, families, equipment, and other property. And when recreation occurs on or near agricultural land, these challenges are very practical. I had a colleague of mine here at Farm Bureau mention that he had some land enrolled in the hunting walk-in access program, and they withdrew it because someone shot up one of their tractor engines, and so they just decided that the cost was too heavy. Unauthorized use of private property for restroom facilities is a real problem in some areas. Alcohol-related behavior can create additional safety concerns. Tubers and others may stop on private banks to socialize, rest, or exit the river without even realizing they're on private property. Irrigation infrastructure can be damaged. Diversion structures, head gates, ditches, and crossings are really essential to agricultural operations. Another modern challenge too is that oftentimes when there's confrontations or conflict, everybody's got a phone. And so landowners can be filmed and have things shared online without context. A landowner might be trying to protect livestock, crops, or property and can be portrayed unfairly, and that can lead to significant backlash. One bad apple can ruin things for everyone, and this is true on both sides. Sometimes there are landowners that act inappropriately or aggressively toward recreators, and that shouldn't happen either. Respect is the foundation of access, and I think the best access programs solve these problems together. I also want to note, as has been mentioned in the previous two presentations, many producers already allow access. There is a lot of accommodation for public recreation on private lands already in Utah. Many agricultural operators tolerate informal access near working lands. Some allow crossing, parking, fishing access, or coexistence with recreation despite the costs and risks. Most landowners, like I mentioned, are not looking for conflict. They want communication, respect, and accountability. And frankly, in many situations, even if they're not enrolled in the access program, the walk-in access program, a lot of times access is granted when people simply ask, explain what they want to do, and show respect for the landowner's operation. Goodwill is built often before it is needed, and a respectful interaction today with the landowner can make future access possible, but a careless interaction today could close the door for everyone that comes after. Next, I wanted to talk about some things that endear landowners to recreating users. So I think there's some practical things that recreators can do to endear themselves to landowners. One of those is closing gates. Closing gates exactly as you found them, or if a gate was open, leaving it open. The gate was that way for a reason, and there are real consequences. We want people to respect livestock, fences, irrigation systems, crops, and equipment. We want you to know where you are. Don't assume that a riverbank is public just because the water is nearby. Stay off private banks unless you have permission. Pack out trash, even if it's not yours. This simple act shares a strong message. Do some self-policing, help police other recreators. Peer accountability matters, and sometimes the best messenger to a careless recreational user is another recreational user, not the landowner. Also, just simply say thank you. Appreciation really goes a long way in rural communities, and one respectful visit can build years of goodwill. I also wanted to talk about education. Education is really key in Farm Bureau, and it's one of the things we do a lot of. Education reduces conflict. We have worked on previous educational efforts, encouraging people to close gates and respect working lands. I'm going to show a portion of a video in just a second that illustrates that. But also agricultural literacy matters because many recreational users don't understand how farms and ranches operate. They may not understand why a gate matters, why livestock need space, why irrigation systems can't be disturbed, or why a riverbank might be part of someone's working operation. Over here on the right, this is a little handbook that DNR put together for cultural resources. I have no idea how they got away with that image of the jackrabbit smoking a pipe, but this is a tiny little handbook, and it's fantastic. It just outlines all of Utah's cultural resources laws, and it can help law enforcement, recreators, and private landowners know the laws that apply when they're out recreating on public land. DNR might want to consider something similar in this space. On this next slide, this is the video I was talking about. We're not going to watch the whole video, but I just wanted to give you a little snippet. This is just a guide to gates, and we may want to work with the Utah DNR to do something similar for fishing access.
As you come to gates out hunting and whatever you're doing, it is very important that you leave them how you found them. If you come to a closed gate, it's important that it's closed. If you come to an open gate, also it's important. If you happen to change something, it can lock animals away from water or whatever. But if you leave a gate open, then it moves the livestock where they're not supposed to be and causes problems. This gate right here is probably the most common gate you'll come across. As he
I'll stop it there. This video features some of the best facial hair I've ever seen. So, all right. Next, I wanted to we've talked a lot about the walk-in access program, so I don't want to belabor this, but we are very supportive of the Utah Walk-in Access program. We think it's a great example of a program that makes sense for producers, using a voluntary partnership model. I do think there are probably some ways to improve the program, and I think Aaron's doing a fantastic job of continually evaluating it and trying to come up with new ideas to improve it. Some of the things I thought about as Andrew was talking, sometimes maybe a flat per mile amount may not be the best for high use areas. So you may have to offer varying amounts. Max customization is really important to landowners because there are different times of the year, lambing seasons and fire seasons, that maybe different uses need to be allowed. And then one of the things I also thought about was maybe river corridor landowner associations. There's landowner associations that work in the hunting space to cobble together private lands to allow certain hunting access, and maybe that's an area that can be looked in for river access as well. But we believe at Farm Bureau compensation should always reflect real costs, risks, liability concerns, and management burdens. So I think this is something that any groups that are interested in increasing access need to be involved with advocating for more funding for this program, because I think it's an area that holds enormous potential. I just have 2 slides left. So first, I wanted to talk about partnerships that work. There are a lot of good examples in Utah of recreation users, conservation groups, agencies, and landowners working together. One of those I wanted to highlight is Utah Fish for Garbage, which improves landowner angler relationships through river cleanups, removing trash, reduces conflict, and protects livestock, wildlife, and water quality. Trout Unlimited, another nonprofit organization, works with private landowners on riverbank restoration, erosion control, and access related projects. Doing volunteer cleanup days, restoration projects, and having respectful communication all show appreciation for access that is provided. And then I found, as I was searching, I found a project from a couple years ago that I thought was really neat. This was a high country fly fishers project. And this slide highlights a successful partnership that expanded access by addressing a practical problem. So a couple of years ago, High Country Fly Fishers, which is the Park City branch of Trout Unlimited, installed several galvanized steel crossovers to crossover fences to replace weather-beaten wooden ones along the Weber River. And this project was made possible by grants from the Division of Wildlife Resources and the Park City Chamber. The goal was to improve access while also protecting fences and private property. And that's the kind of solution that could build trust. I love this quote from one of the news articles from Bill Klopp of High Country Fly Fishers. It says, Klopp said he was grateful not only to Park City Chamber and DWR, but also to the landowners who allow access on their properties. I told one of the landowners, Arlen Judd, that he should let us know if he sees any litter problems so we can come and clean them up, he said. His response was, thank you, but since entering the DWR walk-in access program, litter has been substantially reduced. It seems that the fishers respect the access and do not litter. So this is exactly the type of partnership and relationship that we want more of. Respectful access, clear expectations, good infrastructure, and stewardship can improve outcomes for both recreation users and landowners. And so I'll conclude on this slide, just in conclusion. Farmers, ranchers, anglers, floaters, and Utah families all value healthy rivers. The question is not whether recreation matters, it does. The question is, how do we protect private property, support ag, maintain water infrastructure, reduce liability concerns, and still create workable opportunities for public access? Utah Farm Bureau supports voluntary incentive-based programs, and we will continue to access for increased funding for the walk-in access program. And I believe that should be a shared goal of all of us. And yeah, really, we're thankful for the opportunity to participate in this conversation, and look forward to answering some questions.
Thank you so much for that information, Terry. That was really, really great. I know we're coming close to the top of the hour. So if whoever or all the people that are attending need to jump off, that's fine. There are a couple questions. There are quite a few came in, but I would like to ask a couple and kind of hash these out with our panelists. So we'll probably go a little bit over the hour, but not too much. So if Andrew and Aaron, if you want to turn your cameras on and unmute yourselves, and then I will ask the first question here, which is, we've already touched on, within the framework of the walk-in access program and its incentive structure, how could it potentially be modified to provide more high-value, high-demand fishing opportunities? Aaron, you said that there is money currently left over in the program that's not being used. You're seeking additional funds. How will those additional monies, if acquired, be used? And how can the incentive structure change, and how can we try to enroll more properties if people are interested in doing that?
Yeah, within the walk-in access program, Andrew mentioned that we're below our peak number of access miles. That is because we've actually had a few properties in highly productive, high quality watersheds withdraw from the program, specifically because they were able to get more funding. They were able to get more money from private entities than we were able to offer them. And so the reason I was trying to secure more funding was specifically to target these highly productive, high quality river areas that would be highly utilized and highly beneficial for anglers to have access to. So I don't know if that answers the question clearly, but part of the issue is private entities can offer far more with fewer perceived headaches for landowners sometimes than the walk-in access program.
Mm-hmm. That's understandable. And I guess so with the additional funding that you're seeking compared to the money that was appropriated by the legislature, is there a cap on the legislative money, but not a cap on the other funds that you're looking to acquire?
Yeah, so currently the funding that we get from the state is so there are two laws that provide a lot of funding for wildlife and habitat work, both for fish and terrestrial. There's the Pittman-Robinson Act, which is primarily hunting, and the Dingell-Johnson Act, which provides cost of matching funds from the federal government for angling and fishing projects. Currently, we get a 3-to-1 match. So for every dollar that we can generate on our own, we're able to get a match from the federal government, which increases our funds. So any dollar that we could get in increased funding from the state would potentially be multiplied by 3 through potentially receiving federal funds. So it's from my perspective of managing the program, the more budget I can get from the state, I can triple it or quadruple it by using those funds and putting them towards the program to get more funds to be able to pay landowners for access.
Okay. And then Terry or Andrew, did either of you have any additional comments on kind of the incentive structure or other models that could potentially be advantageous for Utah's walk-in access program?
I mean, I do think it's interesting to look at what Idaho does in terms of having this panel of recreationists and experts to be able to really look at, where do they want to sink their money, where do they want to invest in that, and whether or not that there might be able to have some fluctuations in what the compensation may be. I mean, certainly the state already does a pretty good job of evaluating properties and being able to grade them and scale them. That's one. Certainly in the past, there has been restoration incentives as well for property owners to try to have something that is going to be mutually beneficial in terms of habitat and just the ecosystem. Again, I think there's a potential pathway to continue to utilize that. The state had, as I mentioned, part of it was way back when with that farm bill when they had 2.2 million. The challenge there was that money was eventually sliced in half, and that it just frankly wasn't worth the hassle. So I think that there's other opportunities to look at those public-private partnerships as well as a way of figuring out a way forward that is going to benefit everybody.
From the state perspective, we're also in the process of reevaluating habitat evaluations, kind of like what you described, Andrew, to help target specific properties. Colorado has a similar system as well, where targeted species opportunities on specific species and drainages receive exponentially higher funds, up to $20 an acre in Colorado for some of that walk-in access. That being said, we do offer a few benefits that other states don't offer because they don't have the programs. Through the dedicated hunter program for our walk-in access properties, I try to get our regions to do at least one service project on every walk-in access property per year. Those could include fence improvements, fence replacing, gate replacement, walk-in fence crossovers, like the structure that Terry showed us. Those were actually a lot of those on our walk-in access properties are installed by dedicated hunters. We do bank cleanups, we do habitat improvements, and so there are some non-monetary benefits to landowners participating in our walk-in access program that don't exist in other states.
And then did you have anything to add there, Terry?
No, I think those are all fantastic ideas. I did mention the couple ideas in my remarks just about, max flexibility. I know that's sometimes hard for the division, but it can matter depending on different types of operations that need, to provide closures and things during only certain times of the year. And then, like I said, maybe landowner associations or groups of landowners getting together more rather than just trying to work out individual agreements. There could be some potential for opportunity there.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Terry. I have one clarifying question, and then we can move on to the next broader question. But Aaron, if an outfitter or guide has a current property that they have an agreement with that landowner, and say that landowner goes to the walk-in access program to allow broader public access, can outfitters and guides still use walk-in access properties, or is that against the rules?
The walk-in access program allows all public users to access the property. So a guide or an outfitter would still be able to access the property. We do have a provision in the program if we're doing an agreement on a property that has like a grazing lease, or someone has a lease that includes the hunting rights and they want to enroll it in the walk-in access program. We just need documentation. We need a copy of that lease to verify that they indeed have the power to enroll a property in the walk-in access program.
Okay, thanks. And then here's one from our audience, and there are a few, so I'm going to try to weave these together. But so if there's a current property in walk-in access and then it changes hands, so it's purchased by another property owner, what steps are taken to ensure that users understand that access has changed, and or like how or do they? I guess yeah. Like what's that process kind of look like?
Yeah. So in the past, our mapping system for walk-in access properties was the bane of our existence. No one in the agency liked it. We didn't like it, and we've actually recently updated. It's a much better map today than it was last year. So hopefully that helps people with access. That's the primary way that we advertise properties and their locations. When a property changes hands, once we are notified of that, we immediately go out and remove all walk-in access signs, signage, and it is removed from our website. So we no longer advertise that as a walk-in access property, and our signage is removed. We don't currently have a way where we can advertise this is no longer a walk-in access property, but certainly landowners are more than welcome to post signs on their own property saying that this piece of ground is no longer in the walk-in access program, just in case there are individuals that are used to using a piece of land and haven't bothered to check the map to see if that property is currently enrolled.
Okay. Thanks, Aaron. And then we'll end on this question. So relationships are obviously very, very important in regards between people who are recreating, landowners, and the agency. Aaron, like, what are some of your regular contacts with landowners, and what kind of like issues are you addressing and working through with them? And then, Terry and Andrew, I think both of you kind of touched on this as well. So yeah, what are some of the common or problems that arise and concerns from landowners with people accessing their property, and how do you try to maintain those relationships?
Yeah, I think we've mentioned several of those before. Damage to property, fences, gates being left open, things like that, litter being left behind. And we primarily, one of the biggest tools we have, and I mentioned it before, is the dedicated hunter program, where hunters that are enrolled in the dedicated hunter program volunteer up to 16 hours of service per year. And we plan projects on those properties to help improve infrastructure and habitat and things like that. Like I mentioned before, our regional staff try to maintain strong relationships with those landowners, good lines of communication, so that those issues are handled quickly and effectively. And really our goal with these, when we do have issues, is to go above and beyond, to not only address the issue, but to help prevent further problems. We sometimes will increase signage. Sometimes we will plan projects to not only fix a problem, but to improve a fence or a gate or something like that, and to help really make the program an asset and a good experience for landowners, because we all know if it's not a good experience for a landowner, they're not going to stay enrolled. And we have a vested interest in making sure that our landowners are happy with the program and that it's not more of a burden than it's worth to have the public access their property.
Yeah, so I really thoroughly went over, a lot of the landowner concerns, so I don't want to rehash that. I just wanted to mention, like, I'm grateful to DWR for working on their website, working to provide as much information to the recreating public. There's probably always more that can be done. I know Andrew mentioned that, he's still didn't know what he was walking into in some properties, or the description was difficult to follow. I think all that, using technological solutions, providing photos, showing people where they enter, what they might encounter when they get there, all that kind of stuff helps reduce conflicts.
I think just again that it's some of it's just stopping to take the time if you do bump into a property owner just to literally just thank them. I bumped into him on the regular, throughout the state, and it was just a gesture of just spending a few minutes, just getting a little sense of family history, how long they've owned it, and some gratitude. Um, I think both as Terry and Aaron pointed out, some of the other contributions that some other groups have made. I know Utah Stream Access Coalition has also helped to install those some of the ladders over the fences as well, in different locations throughout the state, and a number of them that I visited as well. I think continuing to play our part individually is critical as anglers, and really understanding that it's a limited resource that we all value highly, and we all have to contribute to our individual stewardship.
And I think that's great. I mean, legal battles and things will continue, but we can still be doing all those things in the meantime, right, to increase access. I think that's great, Andrew.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point and a good theme that has emerged from the last couple is, a few ounces of respect and time from both sides to just shake hands and get to know each other goes a really, really long way. Well, I can't thank you three enough. I really, really appreciated the information that you shared, and I'm sure everyone else did as well. But with that, we're going to conclude the third and final webinar. So if you have any questions or would like to reach out to us or our presenters today, please email Liz, and we will take the questions that you asked in the chat and also forward those on to our presenters as well and try to get you answers to those, because I know we had a lot come in. And yeah, with that, thank you so much for attending. More details, or all the details on these webinars, can be found on our website. And like I said, they're all going to be posted on our YouTube channel if you would like to check in and see what was shared here. But with that, we'll conclude, and thank you, everybody. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.